What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Juju Green, aka Straw Hat Goofy, your movie guy, and I'm sitting here with the director of one of my favorite films of 2025, Francis Lawrence of The Long Walk. How we doing, man?
I'm good. Good. Great
Dude,
talking to you.
I'm super excited to be talking to you, man. I feel like my life for a long time has just been kind of like surrounded by films that you have done, and then kind of like coming to talk to you about The Long Walk, which is, like I just said, not trying to glaze, or the kids would say it's one of my favorite films of 2025, hands down, bar none, definitely in my top 10. Trying to
Oh,
decide
thank
if
you.
it's in my top like 5 to 2 to 3, like it's up there, man. So like I'm really appreciating talking to you right now. What I really like to do on my show, the show is called Get Wrecked, and I like to talk to actors, directors, people who make the things that we love, movies. And I want to give you a chance to kind of like let me get to know you a little bit by your favorite films. So I have this question that I ask all my guests, which
Okay.
is, what is a movie that changed your brain chemistry? Could be any type of movie, a movie that almost like made you see the world differently, created the building blocks to who Francis Lawrence as a person is. What movie was that for you?
Can I say more than one?
Oh, you can do more than one.
Can I
Absolutely.
just like give you little like baby steps? I
Let's
think I
go.
think the movie that made me interested in the making of movies, which is, probably a little bit of a cliche for people my age, but it was Star Wars. So
Mm,
seeing that movie that kind of opened my eyes to movies in a way that they hadn't. I think I was like 6 or 7 when it came out,
right.
which is also kind of crazy because Mark Hamill is in The Long Walk. So to be working
Full
with Luke
circle, man.
Skywalker when that movie was so important to me was a bit bonkers.
You love a full circle moment.
Um, yeah, so I will say like that movie for me, and then some of the Spielberg movies, E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark, those kinds of
Mm,
things as I was growing up. But I will say that so my parents divorced when I was 14, and I would spend 2 days a week or something with my dad. And what we would do is we would either go play golf, which I suck at, or we'd go to see movies, which meant I kind of through my teen years saw everything.
mm,
And maybe when I was like 16 or 17, there was a year, I think it was the same year. There was a year that I saw Raising Arizona by the Coen brothers,
oh
and
wow.
I
Okay.
saw After Hours by Martin Scorsese. And I mean, this is going to be weird because I don't make movies like this at all, but
Okay.
those two movies made me want to make movies. So
Mm,
even though I was interested in how movies were made from a very young age, I never wanted to really be a director until I saw those movies.
mm,
And there was something about seeing those movies made me to realize that movies can be and were really an art form. It
right.
wasn't just movies as movies or, um, you know, just pure entertainment. I realized it
Mm,
was an art somehow. Those two movies kind of opened my eyes to it, and that's when I actually started to study it. And it kind of lined up with a class that I had in high school, this humanities class, and half the year we studied movies,
mm,
and we were looking at Battleship Potemkin and M and Clockwork Orange and all these different things. And I was kind of like having my eyes really opened to cinema for the first time, and that's when I applied to film school and decided I wanted to make movies.
mm,
As an art form and as a career, and I kind of went from there. Yeah, but it
mm.
was Raising Arizona and After Hours.
Ah, okay, I love that. See, I think when I ask this question, and thank you for your answer, by the way. Whenever I ask this question, it's always funny how there's almost a consensus of people saying, I didn't understand movies. I used to watch movies, it's just movies, but then like this movie is what made me realize that this is an art form. And I love how
Yeah.
there's always like a consensus when it comes to that. I've said this on many episodes of the show. Spider-Man 2 is that for me. And I think it's kind of funny how, a comic book film and one of the first comic book films of its kind, Spider-Man 2 was, along with like the original X-Men that kind of like
Yeah.
took itself a little more seriously, kind of like took the poppy, pulpy nature of the comic book medium and kind of made it more accessible to the human, like to human nature. And I just found it funny how, because I saw the first Spider-Man and it was great, and I think it's also hilarious how like Spider-Man 1 and 2, I had two different experiences with it. Where I saw the first Spider-Man, it's like, oh, Spider-Man's a live action person now and he's swinging, that's so cool. To where Spider-Man 2 opened it up to, what does responsibility mean? Like, what does it look like when a guy who is trying to have it all can't have it all because he has to sacrifice? And that's kind of, it was the first movie that made me look at my life and say, well, what am I going to have to sacrifice as I get older and become a man? So, going to college and things like that. That movie came out 2004, so I was 12. So I was like, wow, I'm becoming a teenager. I'm growing up. How am I going to balance all these things? It looks really hard for Spider-Man. How am I going to like deal with these as a person existing in the real world? And I think the first movie that made me see kind of like movies as an art form. Spider-Man was 2 was the first one where I saw it as like more than a film, but as an art form, I gotta say like Danny Boyle's Slumdog Millionaire. You know,
Mm.
I believe that came out in like 2009, 2008, and that was like the first time where I saw a film as kind of like the techniques of it, like the way certain shots were, and it made me want to.
See that, yeah, that's what Raising Arizona and After Hours were for me, is that I'm and always have been a very visual person.
Right.
I think very visually. Also, like music wise, I'm a music person, not a lyrics person, which is
Mm, mm,
weird. I always ask people that too. And I think it was the visuals and the sort of techniques and just going, wow, I've never seen people make movies like this.
right.
And that was the thing that like kind of knocked my socks off and really understanding, you know, sh shots and composition and the energy and the way you move cameras and the way you tell stories
Mm,
visually.
hmm.
That kind of is what Raising Arizona and After Hours did for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
But
What
I
I,
love how you actually connected the sort of thematically to something at 12.
yeah.
I was actually going to ask how old you were when that happened, because that's impressive.
Yeah, dude. Like I attached myself so hard to that film, to the point where I was even obsessed with some of the marketing that was happening for the film, right? And I remember very specifically there was this, how, back in the day, people are watching YouTube more now and more
Yep.
nowadays, but like back in the day, you would watch TV and then a trailer would come on, a TV spot in the middle of whatever you were watching. And I remember there was this one trailer that really stuck out to me after I had already seen the movie where you're seeing these shots of kind of like Spider-Man fighting Doc Ock and all these different types of things, but it was kind of like the taglines that kept like popping out at the screen. And it kept saying things like responsibility, destiny, like, wants, needs. And I found that very interesting. Is like I never thought about Spider-Man in that way, right? And
Right.
after I already having seen the movie, I was like, these are now words that mean more to me after having already seen the movie, right? And so that to attach myself to that film, I'm still very obsessed with it to this day. I will talk about it for hours with you. That's a whole nother episode of the podcast. But um what I love what you're saying right now is like, when you watch a movie, and something that I have kind of like been more attuned to is like directors' voices when it comes to directing a film. And I noticed that a lot of directors have certain ways of like speaking to the audience. I feel like Zach Cregger, I just saw Weapons very recently, and Zach Cregger has a very unique voice in how he tells his stories, the way he tells his story. It's very off kilter, it's very unconventional for horror. And I just love the way he has this very unique way of telling his story. And I find with you, like your voice, when it comes to like you, when you want to talk about your filmography, where you want to talk about Constantine, you want to talk about the Hunger Games franchise, The Long Walk, I Am Legend, there's a bleakness that kind of like permeates throughout all of your films. And that bleakness makes me want to know you more as like a person. Like, what is it about the exploring the darkest timelines of humanity that kind of excites you, and does it excite you? I would really like to know, like, where does that start for you?
It's interesting. It's like I wouldn't have originally, I'm not sure that I would have been able to answer it. And somebody actually pointed it out to me, and it was somebody who was working with me on the Hunger Games, and I think we were making the Mockingjays.
Hmm.
And we started talking about it, and this person sort of pinpointed, and it kind of took this outside voice for me to be able to kind of cement what it was that appealed to me about the stories that I work on,
Hmm.
is that I tend to make movies about very solitary, lonely, isolated people. And it doesn't mean that it's like it's every movie is I Am
Right.
Legend and it's only
Of
one
course.
character, but they are very lonely, solitary people, sort of
Mhm.
lonely souls. And I was like, it was sort of this epiphany for me. And I was like, you are right. I mean, Constantine, lonely soul, Robert Neville in I Am Legend, lonely
Mhm.
soul. I mean, even Rob Pattinson, all those characters are
Yeah.
lonely
Yeah.
people trying to sort of form bonds. And Water for Elephants, Katniss is a lonely soul.
Yes.
I mean, all these people. I mean, you look at McVrees and Garrity, they're trying to connect. They're lonely, lonely
Mhm.
souls. And so I don't really know why. I think,
Still trying to
I
figure that out.
maybe weirdly, and I'm sure, to friends and family that's, this, they wouldn't want to hear this, but I feel like I am kind of a lonely person in a way.
Mhm.
And so maybe that's, and I think I mean that kind of existentially, that, I'm not like a religious person by any means. And so
Right.
I feel like we are all weirdly kind of isolated in this world. And maybe that is some sort of draw that
Mhm.
I'm pulled toward characters that are on very solitary journeys.
Mhm.
Because there's just certain kinds of stories that just aren't appealing to me, and usually now, especially since it's been pointed out, when something is appealing to me, I'm like, oh, right, of course, it's a lonely character.
You get it now.
It's like these people leading very solitary, lonely existences. Like,
Yeah.
okay, that one's for me.
Yeah, no, I got listen, I'm understanding it 100%. It's something that and I feel like that's something that the power of movies kind of like has the power to do, which is kind of make you look inward at yourself, whether you're watching or creating. It kind of like makes you look at that mirror and say, "Oh wow, I didn't know this about myself," right? And I feel like I gravitate a lot towards your films as well, especially like I said, The Long Walk. I feel like this is a big reason why I love this film so much, is because it does have kind of like solitary, lonely characters just looking for some type of companionship or just to walk with somebody, right?
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
I've
I mean, that's honestly one of the huge sort of thematic elements of that movie that I love is the sort of existential side of it, right? Which
Mhm.
is the long walk, King wrote it, I think, for two reasons. One was as an allegory for Vietnam, but
Mhm.
I always took it as sort of a existential life experience as
Yes.
well,
Yeah.
right? That the long walk is life, right? And that we all are on some sort of a long walk. And what do the sort of moments of our life mean? How do they add up? Who do we spend our time with? What are the
Mhm.
sort of bonds that we create?
Yeah.
What the sort of camaraderie we may have with, a group of people around us, and the sort of search and the need for that, I think, is really important. And that's one of the things that really drew me in.
Yeah, Cooper said the same thing because I pointed out to him in an interview that we did was that this movie to me, kind of symbolizes like the long walk towards death, which in a way
Yep.
it's funny that we say this because these are young men, right? Their lives should just be getting started, but they're taking a walk that as soon as it starts, a lot of them realize pretty quickly that they're not going to make it out of this, which is a very kind of like dark thing to think about. But we were talking about this and he said, that's absolutely correct, but also exactly what you said. It's an allegory for like life, right? You're born into it, you meet people along the way, like you make connections, you make enemies, and then you die, right? And it's sometimes it's unceremonious, sometimes it's very quick and very sudden. And I just kind of there's so many themes and so many like metaphors and allegories that are working here that I feel like make the concept so simple, but it's so much bigger when you look at it in macro, right? And so I just really love what you said there about like it is just a metaphor for life, but it's very tragic. Like as soon as the get go happens, like because again, you know that they're not going to make it. There can only
Yeah,
be.
but that's also life, right?
Hmm.
Like, I mean, and what's interesting is that so Cooper and I, because this scene near the end of the movie, and we shot chronologically, so it
Hmm.
was
We're gonna
within the
talk about
last
that.
3 days of the end of the movie. Cooper and I wrote that big speech that he gives McVrees
Mm.
before they walk into the city, when it's just the two of
Ah.
them. They're in the rain and they're going under the bridge, and he starts talking about, walking toward his death and
Hmm.
seeing all those guys die. And because we had gone through this whole experience together and with all these young guys and said goodbye to them all as they all, lost their lives in the story, and had to say goodbye to the actors that we'd become friends with and all of
Mm.
that. But yeah, there was I think a Sunday or something, and we all got together for lunch and just started talking about the themes, and there was a completely different scene that was written. It was the same
Mm.
location, but different scene. But yeah, he and I decided we wanted to change something, and we
Yeah.
kind of wrote it together on the back of like a napkin at this restaurant. Um, Yeah, but it was very cool. But it was all based around the stuff we're talking about.
That's incredible. Now I do want to like touch on something that you said. I'm looking to the left because I know I have my long walk book somewhere here. Like I know because I got the book in college. Like I got it in college and I was obsessed with it ever since then. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I want to like really hit on what you said of like the film being shot chronologically. And I just have a pretty hilarious question because the movie is very grueling to watch. Like it got to the point where I started feeling my knees start to buckle and like move around the muscles. And I felt like I was part of the walk with them. And it feels very grueling for the actors. I heard you guys walk 12 miles a day. On
Yeah, probably at least. I'm sure some days even more.
Oh my God, that's insane. But I just gotta know is like, their director, their captain, did you walk with them or did you get in a car and
I'd walk half of the way. So basically, once the gun goes off and the walk starts, these guys are walking every day in
Mhm.
every location. And, sometimes you have a 7, 8 page scene and, you're walking for that. So you could be walking 3/4 of a mile per
Right.
take,
Right.
per take. And we also had to build the production in a really interesting way, which I've never had to do because this whole movie is on the move.
Right.
Had to build a caravan, this moving caravan. So you have the camera vehicles, which are electric. You've obviously got your picture vehicles,
Hmm.
but then you have the sound cart and video cart that's following the camera cars, and then my cart was back there, so it had the monitors for the cameras. So I'm like traveling along, and we're all moving at 3 miles an hour, so it's
Right.
all accurate, and we would all get up to speed. And so there was this whole moving caravan. But then going back, I would walk back with everybody. So it was
Wow.
riding so I could look at the monitors and
Mhm.
and talk to the cinematographer and through headphones to the camera operators and things like
Mhm.
that. But then I would always walk back, usually with the actors. So
Yeah.
I walked half as much as most of the actors.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Crazy.
they walked a lot. I think they ended up walking, those who made it to the end,
Mhm.
probably 300 plus miles over the course of the movie.
And I know throughout the movie there's literally markers for how many miles that they're walking. Was those the real miles that you were clocking them?
Just about, because I think we measured, I forget the exact number, but I think we measured that by the end it was over 300 miles, and I forget the number now. At the end of the movie, it's like 330 some miles. I mean, it was pretty close
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
to, yeah, except, we did that over what, 35 days or something, and not over
Yeah. That's
4 or 5 days that the movie takes place in.
you had
So
some buffer. You had some buffer there.
yes, but it was still a lot. But what was also really interesting is that, these are all young guys,
Mm,
and young men's minds, form at a different rate than other
mhm,
people.
mhm.
And they were all very gung-ho. They were all super excited. They all really liked the script. They're all ready to walk. Then, thought it was going to be fun.
And then
Just like the characters who all thought they could do it and could win and
yeah.
would make it. And, one weekend and a heat wave and walking, anywhere between 8 and let's say 15 miles a day,
Mm,
like, then the reality sets in. They've all got blisters, they're all
mhm.
sunburned, their joints hurt,
Oh,
it's
oh. There's a
they're
lot that
breaking
happened.
their shoes in, swearing about, what shoes they chose to wear in the
Mhm.
costume fittings, like who chose, boots that rub the wrong way versus sneakers or whatever it is. And it
Oh
was,
my
I mean,
God.
it really mirrored. And then they sort of hit that zone, just like the
Mhm,
characters, where
mhm.
the ones that are surviving, and they have gotten used to it.
Yeah.
And you feel it in the movie,
I think
you feel it with those guys.
I think that's so interesting how because I asked both Cooper and David about this, like, what was your thought process once you're like 100th mile in, blisters are happening, the heat wave and everything. And he literally used the exact words, you just lock in, right? And
Yeah.
it's almost like an athlete's way of saying getting into the zone. And it's
Yep.
also it's weird how the human body, when you're in the middle of a task, a very like physically demanding task, how it does hit a second gear and your mind just kind of zeroes in on what you're doing and then it kind of just naturally goes. And as actors, the name of the game is like, play pretend for all intents and purposes. But this is such a physically demanding type of movie and role that you're forced to have that kind of like athlete's mentality of just locking in when the stakes are like that higher to get this movie done. And I feel like that's the benefit of shooting this chronologically. I think you just answered my question
Uh,
there.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of the things that we sort of tapped into, and this was also something that was not in the book, but we added it.
Hmm.
And there was a documentary that we watched. I think it's called Just 1 Mile, and it's about a real race in Tennessee that's 1 mile long, and it's
Hmm.
like I think it's a figure eight, and there's 300 plus feet of elevation gain and loss with each mile, and you have
Mm.
20 minutes to complete the mile. And if you finish in under 20 minutes, you can rest for the remainder of the 20 minutes, and then you go again.
Oh,
And the winner is the last one standing, right? So you just keep doing it.
it's a
The
real
same
lifelong walk.
it is. It's very similar to long walk. No, I mean, you just either get injured or you bow out or
Hmm.
whatever it is, or you don't finish in the 20 minutes and you're out. You obviously aren't killed.
Yeah, of course.
There's
Thank
the
God.
guy who wins it is basically talks about the mindset. And he was an ex-Navy SEAL, and he was talking about the mindset of like you have to get to a certain point of pain in your body, whether it's joints, feet, blisters, whatever it is.
Hmm.
Also, pain psychologically that, you get delirious, you get tired, but at a certain point, he's
Right.
like, it plateaus. And if you can take it until it hits this sort of plateau where you cannot actually get any more tired, you can't actually
Hmm.
be in any more physical pain. I mean, unless you like break a leg or something,
Right, right.
then you're like good to go. And he had that kind of mindset, and he would set sort of these little mini goals. And that was one of
Mm.
the things we worked into the script of these guys is the sort of just the setting of the mini goals.
Yeah, the thing I kept thinking about when you were talking about kind of like those mini goals and like the pain of plateauing and the things of that sort, I keep thinking about the scene where there is kind of like an incline that happens,
Yeah.
and then I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a moment where the character is already kind of in dire straits, and this
Yep.
incline is kind of like where you could tell that plateau is about to hit, and once he reaches it, he's good to go. And it reminded me of, again, I feel like it's fun that we're talking about athletes in conjunction with this, because Gilbert Arenas, who was a basketball player who I loved watching on the Washington Wizards in like the early 2000s, he was talking about recently, how he couldn't get over the hump of doing like getting to a certain point in the game. And so he started training with like an ex-Marine, and how they would run on the beach. And it's the psychological element is kind of like almost 70 to 80% of the battle, where he said that he's all we're going to do is we're going to run to this house, right? We're going to run to this blue house. Once we hit this blue house, we'll stop. And so they're running, running, running. And like about an hour of running, like Gilbert's kind of looking for this house. Where's this house? Where's this house? And the more he didn't see this house, the more his body started to kind of like give out on him. Whereas like the ex-Marine is still same pace, still going, like not even phased by it. And he says, the more you think about the house, the more you think about that finish line, the end goal, the worse it's going to get. Whereas if you just focus on one step at a time, running in the moment, getting over this step, this step, this step, then you'd be surprised how far your body can eventually go, right? And
Yeah,
so
well, so yeah, the seal and the thing you're saying that exactly the thing we tapped into. This the seal from that documentary was talking about when he was training as a SEAL in Buds.
mhm,
Most guys, and it was running on the beach, they basically, you get wet, you're cold, they roll you around in sand, and then they tell you to run, and then they don't tell you how long you're going to run. And he's like, that's when guys would bail out and they ring the bell and they quit
mm,
because they cannot take it. They don't know what the finish line is. And
right.
that's like the Just 1 Mile. It's like the long walk. You don't know where the finish line is.
Hmm.
And what he got in his head is he goes, I know they're going to serve me breakfast. They're going to serve me lunch. They're going to serve me dinner.
Mm,
So he goes, I would just get in the mindset of like, if I have to run cold and wet and sandy until lunch, then I'll just run until lunch.
mm,
So he just created his own
that's
finish
cool.
line, as opposed to all the guys going like, how long are they going to make me run?
Yeah.
And that's what we added to the script. And David actually gives that speech, right? Which is just
Mhm.
like, we got to just make it to the next moment, right?
Yeah.
We got to,
Yep.
and our first goal is just going to be getting through this hot day.
Yeah. I love
And
that
you just
moment
look
too.
at these like mini moments.
I listen, I'm gonna just like say right now, like I think DJ's performance is like an Oscar worthy performance. I feel
Yeah.
like I made a lot of references in previous interviews of this film, talking about like Shawshank Redemption, right? I feel like it definitely has like a Shawshank feel. Shawshank is one of the four movies I consider perfect. The other three being Her, Your Name, and E.T. You know, you talk about your
Mhm.
Steven Spielberg love.
Yep.
But Shawshank, I love the relationship between Red and Andy. And I feel like in this film, it's a little bit of a reverse where the Red character, you would say, DJ, Peter, uh, he is the light and he's referred to as the light, whereas Andy was referred to the light in Shawshank Redemption. And I really love the speeches that he gives. I really love his mannerisms. He's such a complex character where you can tell that he and Garrity kind of like have different upbringings when they kind of like lay out where their upbringings are. And DJ, you would say, comes from a very worse off like position, but that allows him to show more grace and show more light to people and more forgiveness and things of that sort. And his performance, I could ramble about this performance all day, but I think it's just such a like nice, stalwart, earnest, and dynamic performance that I feel like a lot of people should take recognition of. Um, One thing I
Yeah,
also,
he did a great job. I mean,
yeah,
he's an amazing actor. He's an amazing guy and an amazing actor.
hmm,
It's interesting you're talking about the backstory because the backstory was also something that JT and I added.
hmm,
It's a little different than the book, and I don't want to say, but I will say not entirely, but sort of thematically, I pulled his backstory and the sort of the idea of deciding I'm gonna like approach life with positivity
yeah,
came from an actor that I worked with, their
mm,
personal life. And it was somebody that like told me a story about when they were younger and making a decision to be positive. And it was something that really stuck with me. And so when we were sort of working on the characterization of McVreeze, it was something that I wanted to kind of bring in
yeah,
as an element. And I just thought it was interesting. I just like that idea of somebody that has a darkness who decides they want to be positive and has to work at it
yeah,
every day. And there's a real beauty in that, but there's also kind of just a really interesting truth to the fact that there is that sort of there is that darkness,
yeah.
there is that past, like
Hmm.
there is that sort of possibility, right? That
Hey,
like optimism and positivity, sometimes is a choice, not just,
mm.
your nature.
Yeah, and I feel like we are, like, as human beings, I feel everyone's capable of succumbing to that, right? And especially in a dystopia, like usually you see in these dystopian things, Walking Dead being one of the biggest ones. There's always the conversation of how far are you willing to go? How dark are you willing to get in order to survive in this world? And then, you're already fighting against this without the idea of a competition where the last man standing ends up winning everything that he could ever dream of. But in this movie, like, it's so different. It separates itself from the other dystopian competition genres of film and books because these are characters that are not out to get each other. They're not out to deceive
Exactly.
each other. They're there to outlast for sure, but they're doing it in a way that still supports and uplifts because they understand that that's what's going to get them through, right? It reminds me of this quote: if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together,
Yep.
right? And they know that if any one of them has a chance to win this, they're going to need the help of each other to make it through. And I feel like that's the most unique thing about this story that this movie captures
Hundred,
so well.
100%. And that's one of the things that hooked me from the very beginning when I read it, and that was there in King's, original material and novel, and the thing that really, really hooked me. I
Mm.
mean, the conceit, yes, it is interesting. And anything that sort of gets the reader or an audience member to sort of think like, oh, what would I do if I was in that character's position?
That's why I bought the
That's
book.
great. But the truth is that camaraderie and the way these boys and young men support one another was always the real motivation for me to make this movie.
Mm. And I'm so glad. And I'm so glad you did. Again, like I said, I read the book in college, and it coincidentally coincided with the release of the Hunger Games movies, right? And
Mm.
so, and I feel like that was kind of done on purpose because, again, on the surface, the concepts are very similar: dystopian competition, last person standing, those type of things. So, seeing that on the bookshelf right next to Mockingjay as it was like being released makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah,
But as you crack open the book and you get further into the story, that's where the separations really start to come. And so I didn't say this like back then, but at CinemaCon this year, when I heard that this movie was being adapted, and you can go look at this video where I literally was running out of Caesar's Palace going, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, the Long Walk movie is happening. When your name came up that you were going to be like headlining this and directing this, I said, perfect. That makes perfect fucking sense, right? Like, because, thinking about that college moment and thinking about how I saw it right next to the Hunger Games and seeing your movie with, I think Catching Fire is like the best of that trilogy when you hopped on, like, you just took it to the whole next level. I was like, if anyone's going to bring the truth out of this story, it's going to be Francis Lawrence. And so Lionsgate invited me to watch the movie by myself in this theater. And I was just having this out of body experience watching you fucking crush this thing. Right. And so
Oh, thank you.
it was really cool to kind of have all these things from 2012 to like 2013 just come back in this way. And I just gotta say, man, really appreciate you just like taking this on and like bringing out like the true like heart and just the cinematic nature of the story, which I feel like everyone should be like watching, right? So I just want to
Oh,
a little
I
bit.
really appreciate it. Look, quite honestly, I'm really proud of the movie. I mean, look, my sort of perception of the things that I've done always changes over time and
Mhm,
changes once it's out in the world and, either gets, people like it or don't,
mhm,
or how much it gets shit on, obviously, like changes the way I feel about things.
right.
But, right now I have to say it's probably my favorite movie that I've made. And I think part of it is I'm so proud of the adaptation that JT did and
Mhm.
how we collaborated and so happy with the cast.
Yeah,
And it was a great
still got
experience in the studio that they just supported the intensity of the movie.
that. It is. It's
Not having it be squeaky clean and not trying
yes.
to be PG-13 and letting me cast, just real actors, like
Mhm,
great actors and not, casting based on like Instagram followers and all this kind of
mm.
stuff,
Yeah,
because
and that's a
everybody
real thing I've been hearing. Like casting is
it
like
is,
a new thing.
it's
Yeah.
like, especially the more money you spend, people are like, well, I hope these people have followings and, all this kind of stuff.
Oh,
And the studio just were like, no, go out and find the best actors, the people that you love. And I just think, the guys all just crushed it. I mean, Cooper and
mhm.
David specifically, but everybody in those sort of 10 or
We
12.
want to talk about Ben
Just,
Wong, man. He crushes it.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, he's working with me on the Hunger Games now.
Yes, I saw that. I saw that you guys are
Yeah.
doing like a nice little like relationship there, man. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
talked to
No,
him on the show for a
he was
Karate Kid.
actually just out here in Spain for a little bit, and he'll
Mm.
meet us again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think that man's star is like rising in a big way because I had him on the show for the latest Karate Kid, and he just has kind of like it's funny because he has that quality of the action stars that I know from like the 90s and 2000s, talk like the Jackie Chans and the Jason Statham's, the people who can like do their own stunts and kind of like create a character. But unlike like a Jackie Chan or a Jason Statham, I feel like his character acting is very underrated. Like you hear his accent in this, and he's kind of like the wisecracking, like busting your balls type of character, which I wasn't expecting from him.
Mhm.
And when you add into that, like his physicality as an actor, like you just get this person, this persona that I feel like a lot of people right now are underrating. And so I'm really excited to see what he brings to like your Hunger Games films and what type of like sensibilities he brings to that.
Very, very different. But what I will say and what I love when actors want to act. I
Yes.
love when, like, I don't like when actors just want to be stars. I like when actors want
Mm,
to act. And Ben is an actor. I mean, so's David and so's Cooper and,
yeah.
all of that. But what I just love is like Ben, because he's not in the biggest role in Hunger Games. I mean, he plays
Right.
a real role. He's like a real character in this, but he's just like, I read this book. I love this character. I would love to be a part of it. It's like, yes, please.
Let's go.
And he's like, he's, he's in it to act. He was, this character had an appeal for him, the motivations and what, people thought of this character he really enjoyed.
Hmm.
And I love that. But he's so talented. I mean, in The
Yeah.
Long Walk, his character, Olson, he was one of the last people that we cast in the movie,
Mm.
and we were trying all these different people, and I started actually worrying that we had to work on the character in the script because people
Mhm.
just weren't getting it. Everybody was like flat or it was forced and
Hmm.
nobody was getting it. And then all of a sudden Ben came in and just killed it. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, there was nothing wrong with the character. It's like nobody
You
understood
just
it
needed someone to
until
bring it
Ben.
out. Yeah.
And Ben was the one who just got it and got the humor and got the energy and got the attitude and the physicality and man, his death scene, what he did with that
Crushing.
scene, yeah, it
Crushing, man. Like,
was
yeah.
really amazing. I mean, he had everybody's jaws on the floor when he
Mhm.
brought that out because he saw it in a completely different way than I did. So
Right.
when we first started, he was like, "Let me try something." I was like, "Okay."
Mhm.
And just the way he did it was, I think, just blew everybody away. So he's super talented.
Yeah, he really is. He's a big cinephile too, right? Like I asked him the
Yeah.
same question that I asked you, and this man had list upon list of movies to talk about. We talked about Sinners for an hour before we even started the podcast. The man can like he's an actor, right? Like he knows his stuff. Um,
Yes.
so I want to kind of like jump out of the long walk for a little bit, talk a little bit
Sure.
about your career because I'm very interested of like where you've been and like how that affects where you're at. And we talked about kind of like, your attraction to like lonely characters and you're returning to one of them pretty soon with Constantine too.
Mhm.
And funny enough, I was doing my like little research and I said Constantine 2, and the way Google makes it sound like it came out already. Like it even has like a description for the movie already out. I was like, wait, did I
Right.
miss something? And it hasn't come out yet, and I'm really excited because you talked about like the receptions to films, but I find it interesting that the perception of films can change over time, right? Like obviously Constantine wasn't met with the best reception, but now it's developed this cult following to where people are begging for a sequel. I want to ask you, like in this world, because we know that Constantine is part of like the DC vertical universe, and we've gotten an entire like universe that's died and come back, and now Superman's been a big thing. It seems that you're returning to this aesthetic of Constantine that's way different than what we know in the comics. Like, you tell me, like, how do you like feel about approaching that in this day and age where a movie like Superman, which is also DC, is like highly accurate and people are praising it for it?
I mean, so here's the thing. So I made Constantine 2003, came out 2005, was not met with the best sort of critical sort of response.
Hmm.
You know, made our money back in the end, which was
Right.
fun. So we sort of like broke even, and it was back when ancillary markets were like still worked. So I think it made some money, which was good. And we
Mm.
always wanted to do it again to do a sequel because we all loved it. I loved making it. Keanu loved making it. Akiva, who we worked really closely with, the producer who I
Hmm.
did I Am Legend with, loved making it.
Right.
Um, we also got sort of saddled with an R rating, even though we followed all the rules for PG-13. So we
Hmm.
were really wanted to make an R-rated version of Constantine. And
Right.
so we've been mulling and mulling and mulling. And the problem is that these characters, these Vertigo characters and DC Dark characters, have been kind of passed around to
Mm.
different people. And DC as a company has gone through numerous changes. And there's been all these kind of, you know, hurdles to get by.
Right.
And we finally got to a place where people have sort of said, we'd be very interested in seeing what you guys want to do. And so Akiva and Keanu and JJ, who's now involved, because he had the Constantine rights for a while.
Right.
And he's a great talented guy. So we are all sort of collaborating now and working on something, and we have a great idea, and we're really excited.
Hmm.
Um, but it's our version of Constantine. This is not a thing that, we're not talking about how it fits into
Yeah.
some DC,
Yeah.
cinematic universe. We are making, a sequel to the version of Constantine that we made. So, obviously it's Keanu. We're not
Mhm.
recasting him and making him blonde and British.
Yeah.
And
And then
it's
people
we're
say it's the
like going
multiverse.
back
Let's
to the
do
character that people somehow now love and didn't love so much,
it.
22 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but what's interesting about it is because, I just made the movie that I wanted to make, and
Mm.
with Keanu and Akiva, we made the movie we wanted to make. And you know, it did what it did, and then the perception has changed on it over time, which is
Mhm.
great. But it's weird to come back 20 years later, and we've actually talked about this in our meetings about the script and about the movie, is to start thinking about like, well, geez, it was this weird thing where like people didn't seem to love it all that much, and now people seem to love it. And what is it they love about it?
Right.
And having to sort of go back and kind of analyze and but you can't do too much of that. You kind of have to go, well, what is it that we really loved about it? Like, what is it
Hmm.
about the
Hmm.
character? What is it about the tone? What is it about the feel? What is it about the humor and the
Right.
visuals and all of that again? So it's kind of trying to sort of re-embrace the kind of draw it had
Hmm.
for me in the first place. That's the thing we're really focusing on. But
Yeah.
if we do, and hopefully we do get to make it, um, it's our version of a Constantine too. It's
Right.
not part of some other thing that has, shared characters and
Yeah.
things like
And that's refreshing, man. I feel like that's very refreshing where, I feel I I make this example all the time when I talk about like the beginning of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe and when DC was starting theirs, where the Avengers came out in 2012, and then you have the Dark Knight Rises coming out, I believe, in the same year, right? And so immediately people were thinking, well, how is the Dark Knight going to connect to the Man of Steel movie and this movie? I'm like, guys, Christopher Nolan started Batman Begins in 2005, right? Like the
that.
cinematic universe didn't exist until 2008 with Iron Man, and that post credit scene was tacked on, right? There was no thoughts of doing this thing, and I feel like since that moment, everything that's even remotely based on a comic book is how does it connect to a larger universe where Constantine, it was its own self-contained thing, and the sequel's now going to be its own self-contained scene within that universe, which is very.
Yeah, and I'm a believer that they can all coexist. Like you
Yeah,
can have your movies where the characters kind of share and intermesh and
I
cross
think so
over.
too.
You do certain stories, and then you can also have these kind of one-off pieces that aren't part of it. I
Yeah.
think, like why does it all have to be part of the same thing? It
We're
doesn't.
listen, man. We're having this conversation with the Batman right now with Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves, where they're saying, "Oh, the
Yeah.
Batman needs to go with David Cornswet, James Gunn's Superman." And I really hope they don't bridge those two things off of what the fans think should happen. Like we can have these two things exist and be their own things, have their own tones, have their own universes, and they don't have to always like bump up. Now that I've brought up Batman and Superman, this will tie into another kind of like movie that you've done, which you're also developing a sequel for, I Am Legend and I Am Legend 2. I remember very specifically seeing in the theater the poster for a Batman Superman crossover movie. And then years later, we actually got a Batman v Superman movie. Was this something that you already knew was happening, or were you just kind of like manifesting this? And do you feel responsible for Batman v Superman?
No, I don't feel responsible for it. So the interesting thing is, and I'm going to get some of this wrong because it's so long ago, but
Mhm.
Akiva, who, wrote the last couple drafts of Constantine, who's one of the producers on that movie,
Mhm.
and who wrote the last, drafts of I Am Legend and who developed that, he was the one when we were making Constantine saying like, what do you want to do next? And I said, I Am Legend. And he and I kind of came up with our take and took it to Will and got Will. And then the
Right.
three of us really came up with what is I Am Legend. But Akiva had a deal at Warner Brothers and was doing a lot. And he actually wrote a Batman Superman movie.
Oh, okay,
Don't
okay.
remember for who. This is where my it's gonna get fuzzy, but I remember he wrote one that wasn't happening, I think, and didn't go anywhere. Obviously, it didn't go anywhere, that one.
Mhm.
But I don't remember the state of it at the time. But when we did that Times Square sequence, he actually was the one that was like, it'd be fun if we just made up because we were guessing like
Right.
what would these be if we made that movie in 2006. It was coming out in 2007. So we were,
Mhm.
like what movies would have come out in 2007 that could be on, billboards in Times Square.
Yeah,
And it was a Warner Brothers movie, so we could, got permission to do
makes sense.
the
They,
that. So
listen, you did it, bro. Like I feel like you manifested that to happen. You called it like
yeah,
100%. I know we only
that
got
and the gas prices. That's
and
the
the
other
gas.
thing. I apologize to everybody for manifesting those
You
gas
are
prices.
you are just like the Simpsons, man. You need to chill. Hopefully, the long
Yeah,
walk doesn't have anything that
exactly.
we gotta look forward to. Well, thank you so much, Francis, for talking to me about the long walk and everything else, man. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you. Great chatting with you.
Nice chatting with you too. I hope to see you at the red carpet.
All right, perfect.
All right, man. Take care.